Tag TV and Tag Radio be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Do you do business with state or local governments in this slow economy with state revenue collections, well, let's just say decreased? What's the news on improving this situation? And what legislative proposals are out there that just might impact the sale of technology products and services in Georgia? Wait a minute. Where do you stand on internet sales tax legislation? How about kids bringing their own technology to school without school board approval? Have you heard about virtual charter schools moving through the legislative process? Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, February 20th, 2012, and this is the 2012 General Assembly Report, a special edition of Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. In TAG's continuing legislative action, you need to know, and that's when Brandon Hembree, partner of the prestigious government relations firm Massey, Watson, Bowers, and Hembree, and TAG's Government Relations Task Force Chairman, steps up to the Tech Talk. An advocate for Georgia's technology community, TAG is committed to working with federal, state, and local elected officials to promote sound public policies that will enhance the growth of the tech industry. TAG's Government Relations Task Force focuses on industry awareness and education outreach to lawmakers and General Assembly updates to TAG members. From the 2012 Legislative Tracker to the quick links on Capitol updates, from Tech Voice Online assisting you to be heard by your legislators, to our regular 2012 General Assembly reports on TAG Radio. Hear the facts, get the positions, and let your voice be heard. It's Tech Talk Special 2012 General Assembly Report as Tino gets under the Gold Dome and inside the legislative process with TAG's Task Force Chairman and Government Relations experts, Brandon Hembree.
Brandon, thanks for joining me on Tech Talk today.
Hey, Tino, it's good to be back with you and talking about activities under the Gold Dome.
Well, you're in the middle of it all right now, but talk a little bit about how many days are left and what's going on down at the Capitol.
Okay, well, we're about halfway through. Tomorrow is actually Legislative Day 22, so we're about to reach a critical junction here. Crossover Day is expected to be the first week of March, and that's when bills have to be out of their chamber of origin. It looks like we're going to be finished with the legislative session around the first week of April, so they're going to get done a little bit early this year.
And there's been a lot of media coverage around the possibility of an internet sales tax. I'm sure our listeners are interested in that one. What's the status on legislation there?
Well, that's a good question, and I think you're right. I think it's going to be an important issue for the technology community. We have not seen the exact language yet. A bill, essentially a placeholder bill, has been introduced by Representative Matt Ramsey. We understand it's probably going to look like legislation that passed in California, which I think most of the technology community is fairly familiar with. It's called Affiliate Nexus, and it tries to establish a physical relationship to the state for vendors like Amazon and Google. And it's definitely something that, has divided the technology community. So I think once we see the language, we're really going to be relying on the technology community here in Georgia to provide us some feedback. And I understand from the TAG Governmental Affairs Director that once we have that language, we're going to get it out to the technology community for their review. And we would just encourage as much feedback as possible on those bills. There's an interest in Georgia, I think, to provide some fairness with online retailers and those that sell on the internet. But it's also important that we do what we can to protect the internet sales industry here in the state.
And you talked about reference TAG members participating in technology, people participating, and certainly TAG is a key spot for that to happen. And we have a system called CapWiz where people can come on and weigh in on things like this. So they can get to Richie Johnson, our government relations person, or to me, or email us if there's an issue. And it is important from a grassroots standpoint. We want to mobilize the technology community on a number of issues, and so they need to be on the lookout for that. I guess you can speak, Brandon, to the kind of difference it makes when you can rally the troops in a particular area, vertical or whatever. The schools have been doing it for years. Any thoughts about that?
Sure. Well, it's tremendously important, and I think TAG has put a good system in place in order to help with grassroots outreach. And it's been an evolution for TAG, over the last few years. As TAG has become more engaged in activities down at the Capitol, they've also asked for the technology community to become more engaged from a feedback standpoint. So I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, if you look at the makeup of the task force, there are about 20 different members on the task force, but it doesn't necessarily represent the entire technology community. So it's absolutely important that we get the differing opinions from the technology community, so that we know how to react to legislation and what activities to engage in, as far as lobbying efforts are concerned.
Right. Well, I know Frank Baia from Global Speak interviewed you about a month ago, and you talked about some educational initiatives that were designed to increase access to technology for digital learning, and we certainly heard that as we went around for Senate Resolution 68 and interviewed and heard comments about kids carrying the 50-pound backpacks and not maybe taking advantage of that, and then also getting students to be able to advance through alternative learning environments like virtual charter schools. So is anything moving in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. There are actually several pieces of legislation, and fortunately for the technology community, TAG has been actively involved in discussions on all of these bills. So I guess what I'll do is I'll give you a summary of the top 3 bills that we're tracking and working on currently. Representative Mike Dudgeon has a bill that is designed to allow students to bring their own technology to the school system. We have a number of county school systems in the state that aren't able to afford one-to-one initiatives or aren't able to afford giving a laptop or a desktop to each student that's within the school system. But what they've done is they've established programs where students can actually bring their own technology to the school. So if they have a laptop or an iPad or an iPhone or something that enables them to be engaged digitally while they're at school, the school systems are open to allowing that to happen. And Mike Dudgeon's bill makes that legal. Currently, the school systems have to get a waiver from the Department of Education in order to implement those programs. There's another bill sponsored by Senator Chip Rogers that deals with the Georgia virtual schools. A number of years ago, the state of Georgia implemented an online course for students in rural parts of the state, which allows them to access online learning opportunities that they may not be able to engage in their rural school systems. And what this does is it requires that each student take at least one online learning course and also establishes some fair fees for those students to be able to access the content online. So this is a really important step forward from a digital learning perspective. The other really important bill that TAG has become involved in is the charter school constitutional amendment. And Tino, as you know, many of the more innovative STEM programs around the state are being pursued by charter schools. And in addition, there's an increased movement for virtual charter schools for non-traditional students that that need another option versus your typical brick and mortar school. And this constitutional amendment would make it easier for those charter schools and virtual charter schools to be approved here in Georgia. So all three of those bills, I think, are very important from an education standpoint.
I agree, and all of those can really help advance both the education system and ultimately, in the long run, the technology industry here in Georgia that has a major shortage in jobs right now. We have over 4,000 positions open. So these are all very important, and again, I think our members, our constituents can participate in this and have your voice be heard. Well, I have time, Brandon, for one more question, and there are many members of TAG currently doing business in the state, and we've seen the economy go through some tough times, even though the technology industry is maintained a stronger position than most of the industries, fortunately, but the state revenues we've seen decrease, and organizations looking to do business with the state, there's just not that much money, or there hasn't been to participate. So what's the feeling at the Capitol, and is the situation improving on that? And, along with that, other legislative proposals that could impact favorably, companies that are looking to do business in the technology, whether it be products or services, how they might look to be faring in this year and next year?
That's a great question, and as I talk to technology members of TAG, I'm amazed at how many of those companies do business with government entities here in Georgia, and how an important component that is of their business model. And you're absolutely correct. Past years have not been very good from a revenue perspective for the state, but it looks like things are improving. December revenue figures were up for Georgia. January was up slightly, not as high as we would have liked to have seen, but all things indicate that the economy in Georgia is improving and that revenue collections for the state are increased. And just in general, I've seen a much more positive attitude by the General Assembly regarding the state budget situation. So I think that if you're a company doing business with Georgia, I would say that we are definitely out of the valley, and just be patient. I definitely believe that government spending is going to increase, as well as opportunities for technology companies to do business with government.
Well, Brandon, thanks for the leadership role that you've played and are playing with TAG and on our Government Relations Task Force, and the work that you're doing at Massey, Bowers, and Hembree. And we look forward to getting more updates from you. And thanks for joining me on Tech Talk.